She's in a better place. She's singing in heaven now and finally singing in tune. Don't cry, Gail. You'll see her again someday. On the other side. These were some of the well-intentioned comments that were made to me several years ago, right after my mother passed away. I'm sure they were just trying to comfort me, right? After all, it was an unexpected death, and it happened right in front of me, so it was pretty traumatic. Someone at my mother's funeral even said to me, "She's up in heaven now, looking down, watching over you." I'm from Texas. And I said, "Ew." I didn't want her to know what I was up to when she was alive. The thought of a disembodied ghost hovering around my shoulder, watching everything I do, could not comfort me. It creeped me out. Just like the old saw that there are no atheists in foxholes, which is not true, by the way. I think the loss of someone that we love, that's dear to us, is a real test, isn't it? To find out, do we really believe in something, or do we need the comfort of an afterlife? Well, this wasn't a comfort to me to hear those things. And I never felt the presence of the supernatural. Most of us in this room, especially we elderly ones, have experienced the death of a parent or a loved one. We freethinkers pride ourselves in our rationality, but this is a subject that is very emotional, very personal. It's hard to rationalize it away. So what I want to talk about is how we, as freethinkers, deal with it. How did you find comfort? How did you find comfort and peace and acceptance when you lost your loved one, however it happened? How do we perceive also our own impending deaths? Because that's the only must in life. Well, I talked with some other members, and I talked with Judd Davenport, a fellow member. Judd has allowed me to talk about his brother. Is he a police officer in Arlington?
Based out of Waco.
Based out of Waco, okay. Younger than Judd. He was tragically killed in the line of duty just last May. Judd said, well, there is no comfort to be had when something like that happens. Not right away. So we talked about what the things were that we did for comfort and for peace. Because Judd said, you know, he had a new respect for those that believe in an afterlife. Because knowing that someone you cared for that dearly is gone forever is incredibly painful. But because we don't believe our loved ones have moved on to a better place, we find our own ways to cope, don't we? Found our own ways to keep their memories alive. Judd said something, this may sound simple, but it's powerful. Said his friends helped him cope. You know, friends, real friends that know all about you and still like you anyway. Because Judd and I both came from very religious families, and that was a hard time. That's certainly not a time to pick a battle and talk theology. So we both found a lot of comfort in our friends. Don't you think that's a good resource right here, this church, for that? We all made a lot of friends here, and I think we can do ourselves the service by being there for each other, not only during this kind of time, but also any kind of tragedy and need that we have. So this is great that we've got this. It's somebody to talk to that you don't have to put on an act around, that you can rant and rave and not have to watch what you say. Judd eventually also found some comfort by assigning some meaning to things. He said, no, guys, it's not a lucky rabbit's foot. It's just giving meaning to personal articles. Steve had a hat. Was it a cowboy hat? Judd keeps Steve's cowboy hat, and when he looks at it, that brings back the memories. When my father died, I collected all his Lions Club pins, and I have those in a box. Well, with my mother, I have her favorite book of Aggie jokes. Would you like to hear one? Are there any children? How do you know when you're getting close to A&M University? I can't believe we told you this. The sheep are backed up against the fence. It's her favorite, Tim. Aggie's sex manual. In, out, Repeat if necessary. That's all. That's it. See where I get my nuttiness? Okay. It helped too to know something about my mother and to know that she didn't die because someone was out to get me. I wasn't singled out to lose my mother. It happens to everyone. It helped to understand why my mother died of a stroke at barely 60. She was a heavy smoker. She drank a bit. And because we were from Southeast Texas, everything that passed between her lips was fried. She was a stroke waiting to happen. Actually, that helped to understand and not take it personally that I lost her. It also helped to know that things were good between my mother and me when she died. And I didn't have this need to talk to her again, to apologize, or to mend fences. I didn't need to see her on the other side. So that's something maybe food for thought for all of us. I'll tell you what gave me the most comfort, besides the Aggie jokes. And it continues to give me good memories about my mother. After the funeral, we all gathered at the house, and the talk of God in heaven started as soon as the casseroles were heated up. And remember, coming from Texas, everyone in the room, except for me, was either Baptist or born again. But instead of rolling my eyes or leaving the room, I tried to direct the conversation back to my mother. I saw a lot of relatives I had never seen or hardly ever talked to, and asked them to tell me their stories, their Verna stories. And boy, did they ever. My mother enjoyed the heck out of life. She was quite a practical joker with her friends, her family, and even her boss. She could never tell a joke properly because she'd get too excited and giggly and you could never understand the punchline. So it was wonderful to hear all those stories about my mom. If I had a regret, it was that I didn't get the stories directly from her. I didn't get along all that well with my parents. We loved each other a lot, but there was lots of discord. And I wish I had sat down with both my parents and heard their stories. One reason is that at the funeral, after the funeral, the talk went around of the fact that we're directly related to the infamous Aaron Burr. Does anyone remember? I think he wanted to be Emperor of Texas. My grandmother's maiden name is Burr. But there's family legend that I'm also directly related to Alexander Hamilton, who was unfortunately killed by Burr in a duel, which is why I'm always at odds with myself. So I know I can probably do the search and find out if any of that's true, but that's pretty great family lore, and I wish I had asked my parents more what they knew about their families growing up in Louisiana and Texas and about our history, which I think was quite rich. My mother once told me that we were probably related to horse thieves because she never felt comfortable wearing turtlenecks. So my mother was loved. My mother left a mark. It was a life well lived. So guys, let's not wait for our loved ones to kick the bucket before we hear their stories. After all, how many of us still have to go to the obligatory visit to see Uncle Bob or Grandma Pearl, whom we have nothing in common with, and never have anything to say, well, I've solved all your problems. Bring a notebook or video camera. Sit down and ask them to tell their stories. People do like to talk about themselves. But since we don't believe in when we die we'll be frolicking in the clouds and strumming a harp, since I don't think I'm going to get the chance to reincarnate as a supermodel, this is it. This is my life. This is our one shot. Do we want to make a difference? Do we want to make it important? How do you want to live your life? How do you want to be remembered? Do you have a burning desire to leave a legacy? I know that a lot of us do. Maybe it's through your career, or maybe it's through philanthropy. Maybe you'll find a cure for something, or bring new life into the world, or maybe you'll deliver new life into the world. Maybe your legacy and your contribution is to make beautiful music. Or, I don't know, start a new church. For me, that's why I'm a zoo educator and a cartoonist, because I love animals and I have a need and I really want to make a difference. And it makes me deported, but I still love what I do. So you say, I'm not clever enough to cure anything. I'm too poor to be a philanthropist. That's okay. Just be a great friend, or a great lover, Or a really funny person like Marianne that's the life of the party. Get out there, be adventurous, live life, wear more red! Sorry, I used to be a motivational speaker. It just catches up with me every now and then. So you don't have a passionate need to leave a legacy? Okay, then leave a leg. Or a heart, or a lung. Do any of you have your organ donor card? Or have it designated on your driver's license? Be aware that sometimes when they renew your license, they forget to notate it. So, I know some of us have issues with organ donation. I respect that. If you've seen coma or blood work. But there probably are some legitimate concerns, but I think this outweighs those concerns for me personally. I have a brochure I've downloaded and printed out from the website that you can look at the back of the room. For any of you that are interested, I think it's a wonderful legacy. I read on the website about 63 people receive an organ transplant each day. Then there's about 16 people that die that were on the waiting list. To me, that's unacceptable. And the good news is that we as freethinkers don't have all those pesky religious barriers that would keep us from parceling out our parts when we die. So consider that as your legacy. Finally, is it important for you that your family honor your wishes at your funeral or service when that time comes? I know that we won't be there, so it's probably like whatever. But when my father died, well, I'll tell you first, when my mother died, I remember going to the minister, she was Methodist, and I said, please talk about my mother a little bit. And he asked me her story, some that I knew, and it was a beautiful service. But when I went to my father's funeral before that, I remember walking out and biting my lip, resisting the temptation to say, Mom, I think we were at the wrong service. This funeral was for some guy named Jesus. Yeah, some of you are nodding. So if that's something important, it's not, I don't think it's binding by law, but have you had that written to your will? I would like to read an excerpt from my will. Is that okay? All right. My husband's a lawyer, so I think that was, he wrote this for me. It's very cute. Okay. My body should be cremated, and no formal or religious memorial service or funeral should be held. Any commemoration should be a gathering for a party for those who have known me, preferably accompanied by mimosas. What do you think? Well, anyway, I hope that something as tragic as what happened to Jeff will never happen to you. But death is inevitable. We're going to all experience that loss. And we're also going to experience our own. What can we do? We lean on our friends. We find precious memories that we can keep alive. We acknowledge how and why it happened. And we keep memories alive through their stories and keepsakes. A friend once told me that when you cease to exist is when the last person to know of you dies. Okay, I like that. So about our own death and our own life, leave your mark. Tell your stories. Raise a little hell, but not too much so your organs can be donated. And then if we do, we'll have that life well lived. And right now, while we're still alive, we'll be in a better place. Thank you.